You've heard the word 1,000 times. Inflation. It's on the news. It's in political arguments. It's why your grocery bill feels rude. But if I asked you to explain exactly how inflation works, step by step, could you? Most people can't, and that's not your fault. It's usually explained in complicated charts and economic jargon. So in the next 10 minutes, you're going to understand inflation completely. What it is, why it happens, why governments actually want a little bit of it, and what causes it to spiral out of control. This is the only inflation video you need. Let's fix this. So what is inflation? Simple definition: inflation is when prices go up over time and your money buys less. That's it. If a burger cost $2 20 years ago and $6 today, that's inflation. If a movie ticket used to be $5 and now it's $15, that's inflation. But that's just the surface. The real question is, why do prices go up? At its core, inflation happens when there is more money chasing the same amount of stuff. Imagine a tiny island with 10 people and 10 bananas. Each person has $10. Bananas cost $1 each. Everything is calm. Now imagine everyone suddenly gets another $10. Nobody grows more bananas. There are still only 10 bananas. What happens? People start offering more money to make sure they get one. The seller realizes, wait, everyone has more cash, so he raises the price to $2. Now bananas cost more, not because they're better, not because they're bigger, but because there's more money competing for the same bananas. That's inflation. Now, there are a few main ways this actually happens in the real world. First, demand pull inflation. This is when people want more stuff than businesses can produce. Let's say the economy is booming. People are getting raises. Jobs are everywhere. Everyone feels rich. So they start buying more cars, more houses, more everything. But factories can only produce so fast. Builders can only build so many houses. So what do companies do when demand explodes? They raise prices. Not because they're evil, because they can. If 50 people want 10 cars, the price goes up. That's demand pull inflation. Demand pulls prices higher. Second, cost push inflation. This one starts from the other side. Instead of customers having too much money, businesses suddenly face higher costs. Maybe oil prices jump. Maybe wages increase. Maybe raw materials get more expensive. If it costs a bakery more to buy flour and pay workers, they have two options: lose money or raise the price of bread. They raise the price. Now bread is more expensive, not because people demanded more bread, but because it costs more to produce. That's cost push inflation. Third, monetary inflation. This one is big. This happens when governments and central banks increase the money supply. Here's how that works. Every country has a central bank. In the US, it's the Federal Reserve. Think of it as the thermostat of the economy. Its job is to keep things from heating up or freezing. One of its main tools is interest rates. Interest rates are the cost of borrowing money. If rates are low, borrowing is cheap. People take out loans for houses, cars, businesses. Money flows everywhere. If rates are high, borrowing slows down. Spending cools off. During crises like the 2008 financial crash or the 2020 pandemic, central banks slash interest rates, sometimes almost to zero. They also pump money into the system. Why? Because when people stop spending, the economy can collapse. Businesses fail, jobs disappear. So governments inject money to keep everything alive. But here's the catch. If they inject too much money and production doesn't increase at the same pace, you get inflation. More money, same amount of stuff, prices rise. Now here's something most people don't realize. A little inflation is actually intentional. Most central banks target about 2% inflation per year. Yes, they want prices to rise a little. Why? Because small inflation encourages spending and investment. If you know prices will be slightly higher next year, you're more likely to buy today. That keeps businesses growing, it keeps jobs stable, it keeps money moving. If inflation were zero or negative, meaning prices fall, people might delay purchases. Why buy a car today if it'll be cheaper next year? That sounds nice at first, but if everyone waits, businesses lose revenue, they cut jobs, the economy slows down. That's called deflation, and it can be dangerous. So 2% inflation is like economic lubrication, not too hot, not too cold, just enough to keep things moving. Now, let's talk about when inflation goes bad, really bad. Hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is when prices rise extremely fast, sometimes more than 50% per month. Imagine a loaf of bread costs $3 today. Next month, it's $6. The month after that, it's $12. Soon, you need a backpack full of cash to buy groceries. This has happened in Germany after World War I, in Zimbabwe in the 2000s, in Venezuela more recently. In these cases, governments printed massive amounts of money to cover debts or spending, but production didn't increase, so money became nearly worthless. When people lose trust in currency, everything breaks. Savings vanish, contracts collapse. People rush to spend money immediately before it loses more value. Some countries end up abandoning their currency entirely. That's the nightmare scenario. But here's something important. Inflation doesn't hurt everyone equally. If your wages rise at the same speed as inflation, you're mostly fine. Your purchasing power stays the same. If your wages rise faster than inflation, you're actually gaining. But if prices rise faster than your income, you're losing ground, quietly, every month. That's why inflation feels so painful. It's not just higher prices, it's when income doesn't keep up. Now, quick pause. If this is finally making sense, that's what we do here every single day. One confusing money topic, clear explanation, no nonsense. Subscribe if you're done pretending to understand economics. Now, how do governments fight inflation? Mostly by raising interest rates. Remember, low rates encourage borrowing and spending. High rates slow it down. When inflation rises too fast, central banks increase rates. Loans become more expensive, mortgages cost more, credit cards cost more. People borrow less, spend less. Demand cools down. Prices stop rising as quickly. But this has side effects. Higher rates can slow the economy too much. Businesses may cut hiring. Recession becomes possible. So central banks are constantly balancing. Too much inflation is bad. Too little inflation is bad. It's a tightrope walk. Now, let's zoom out. Inflation isn't random, it's not a conspiracy, and it's not just greedy companies. It's usually the result of three forces interacting: money supply, demand for goods, and cost of producing goods. If money grows faster than production, prices rise. If demand explodes faster than supply, prices rise. If production costs surge, prices rise. That's the machine. And once you understand that machine, the headlines start to make sense. Oil prices spike, transportation costs rise. That pushes up prices everywhere. Government sends stimulus checks, demand jumps. That can push up prices. Interest rates drop, borrowing increases. That can push up prices. It's all connected. All right, quick recap. 1. Inflation means prices rise and money buys less. 2. It happens when more money chases the same amount of goods. 3. It can be caused by high demand, rising production costs, or increasing money supply. 4. A little inflation, around 2%, is intentional and considered healthy. 5. Too much inflation destroys purchasing power. Hyperinflation destroys currencies. And 6. Central banks control inflation mainly through interest rates. That's inflation, fully explained. Is there more complexity? Of course, entire textbooks exist on this. But you now understand the core engine, the mechanism, the why behind the headlines, and that already puts you ahead of most people. See you tomorrow.